Even if you shuffle your cards, you will end up with the same sequence as your spectator. The magician presents two piles to the spectator, one blue pile and one red pile. He shows to the spectator that both piles have 10 cards each and both piles have the same sequence. Now the magician asks the spectator to pick either pile. The spectator picks the blue pile. Therefore, the magician picks the red pile. To continue the trick, the spectator will have to follow some instructions from the magician about how he will shuffle his cards. First, he must deal a certain number of cards on the table. When this is done, he must turn around the cards that he's holding in his hand, just like so, and place the rest of the cards on top of the pile on the table. In order to shuffle the cards thoroughly, the magician asks him to repeat the same process a few more times. The spectator deals cards on the table, turns around the cards that he's holding in his hands, and places them on top of the pile on the table. The spectator continues to follow the same process a few more times. When he's done, the magician grabs his own pile, and he follows the same process as well. He deals cards on the table, turns around the cards that he's holding in his hands, and places them on top of the pile on the table. To thoroughly shuffle his cards, he follows the same process a few more times. When the shuffling is done, the magician takes the two piles, and he shows to the spectator that the two piles don't have the same sequence. The first card of each pile don't match, nor do the second cards, nor the third cards, and so on. The magician continues to show each card, and there's absolutely no match. Now that the spectator is convinced that there's absolutely no match between the two piles, the magician asks the spectator to point to a pile. The spectator points to the red pile. Therefore, the magician takes the red pile, and he asks the spectator to give him any number between 1 and 9. The spectator gives the number 5. Therefore, the magician deals 5 cards on the table, and just like before, the magician turns over the cards that he's holding in his hands and places them on top of the pile on the table. And to end the trick, the magician waves his hand over both piles, and he shows to the spectator that now the sequence of the two piles perfectly match. The first cards of each pile are the same, so are the second cards, the third cards, the fourth cards, the fifth cards, and so on. How impossible is that? To perform this trick, start with 2 piles and show to your spectator that both piles have 10 cards each and both piles have the same sequence from the first card to the last card. When this is done, close up the 2 piles and ask your spectator to pick either pile. Let's say he picks the blue pile. Simply take the other pile for yourself. Here's the instructions that you must give to your spectator in order for him to shuffle his cards properly. First, ask him to deal a certain number of cards on the table. When this is done, ask him to turn over the cards that he's holding in his hands and to place them on top of the cards already on the table. So far, the spectator has shuffled his cards 1 time. The spectator can repeat the same process as many times as he wants. The first part of the secret here is to remember how many times he has shuffled his pile. So far, he has shuffled his cards 1 time. He repeats the same process a second time. So far, he has shuffled his cards 2 times. He repeats the same process once again. he has shuffled his cards 3 times. He repeats the same process once more. He has shuffled his cards 4 times. And now he decides to shuffle his cards one last time. In total, he has shuffled his cards 5 times. When he's done shuffling, simply remember how many times he shuffled his cards. In this case, he shuffled his cards 5 times. Since he shuffled his cards 5 times, you'll know how many times you'll have to shuffle your own cards in order for the trick to work. Depending on how many times he shuffled his cards, shuffle your own cards one less time or one more time than your spectator. In this case, since the spectator shuffled his cards 5 times, I'll decide to shuffle my own cards 6 times by following the same process of shuffling. That's 1 shuffle. That's 2 shuffles. That's 3 shuffles. That's 4 shuffles. That's 5 shuffles. And finally, that's 6 shuffles. When you're done shuffling your cards, bring your pile next to his and show to your spectator that the sequence of your pile doesn't match the sequence of his pile. As you can see, every time I compare the 2 cards, the cards never match. And it is important that they don't match, as you will make them match later in the trick. Once you have convinced your spectator that the sequence of the 2 piles don't match, simply ask your spectator to point to a pile. Let's say he points your pile. Simply take it and ask your spectator to give you a number between 1 and 9. Let's say your spectator gives you the number 7. Simply deal 7 cards on the table, turn over the cards that you're holding in your hand, and place them on top of the cards that are on the table. Simply wave your hand from some magical effect, and when this is done, the sequence of both piles will perfectly match. As you can see, every time you show the first card of either pile, they are always the same, from the first card until the last card. Your spectator will not believe his eyes.